Hey, what's going on, freaks and friends? So with Saw 10 only 2 months away from release, I figure now is as good a time as any to do a sort of tailgate ranking of the 9 films that currently make up the Saw franchise. Let's go. So the Saw franchise has the new film coming out in 2 months. September 29th, we're supposed to see the release for Saw 10. As of right now, there are 9 films that make up the franchise, of course. And this is a franchise that's been around for about 20 years now, almost. And it's not one that I really was watching as the films were coming out. It wasn't until, I think about Saw 5, Saw 6 maybe, that I started to really get with the program. I know the first one I saw was the third one, and by the time I got into the series, I was already ahead of where I should have been in terms of watching the films. And initially, it was not really my thing. I was still into those older slashers. It wasn't even the gore aspect that I was turned off by on this. It was just, well, I don't really care for this. I'm not interested. But after the 7th film came out and a few years afterward, I'd seen a couple of them sporadically, and I was more or less aware of who the bad guy was throughout the franchise, as it were. Debatable on whether or not John's completely a bad guy. He's a bad guy. Watching these out of order kinda maybe tarnished the experience a little bit for me, but it's still a franchise that I do plan on talking about. I probably will get around to doing reviews for them sometime after the 10th film comes out on home media. But without any further ado, let's get into the ranking as it stands. So coming in 9th place, the worst of the Saw franchise. This is one that I can say is probably objectively a bad film. I think most people would agree with this one. Saw 3D, Saw the Final Chapter, whichever you choose to call it. This one came out when the 3D craze was really going on in film, and it was a really interesting time for horror films, from what I remember. It's been freaking 13 years now, and I don't know, I remember when this one came out, I was totally fed up with hearing about the Saw movies coming out, because I didn't really get into them until much after they were done making the original run of films. And this is one that when I did see it after watching the other ones, it didn't really work for me. A lot of it is the pink blood that we get. The story, I know, was supposed to be made into 2 films. I actually learned that from my buddy Chris's channel, Movie Misfits, where he does the Jigsaw files. That is one that I definitely think should have been made into 2 films, because it feels like there's too much going on here for a Saw film. And the main protagonist, we can't really get behind him as a character. He absolutely sucks. The main detective in the film, who's trying to protect Jigsaw's widow or ex-wife, that guy was a real piece of work. We liked him in Final Destination, but he should have Final Destination himself in here. The real standout in this film, I think, is honestly the junkyard scene with Chester Bennington. Everybody loves to see a bunch of neo-Nazis get what they got coming to them, so that's always a fun bit to watch. I think the opening scene was pretty fun too. Spoilers for a movie that's 13 years old and nobody enjoys. A character from the first film, Dr. Gordon, comes back, but I don't know, man. This one is just a really unenjoyable film to watch. Coming in at number 8, this one, I remember being pretty excited for this one when it came out, because by this point I had already gotten pretty into the films that we had before. That should make it pretty clear that this is going to be Jigsaw from 2017. I was pretty hopeful with this film. I didn't see it in theater. I got it from the Redbox, though. I ended up actually buying my copy from there. So I have a very crudely designed box art for that one. But now this one is weird because it follows 2 different storylines as it goes along, and I think that was an interesting idea. But the overall execution of this film, just something about it feels really weird. And the main character that we get in here is just like in Just like in Saw 3D, the main character that we're supposed to be wanting to follow here is an absolute garbage human being. In fact, all the people that are in the traps in this one really are garbage human beings. But I do kind of like the little reveal that we get that the main body of the film is going on separately from the investigation, where it had happened years before. And, I didn't really expect that from what I remember. I don't think I really saw that one coming, honestly. Like, I was starting to get suspicions throughout the film that something weird was going on. But by the final reveal, I found myself pretty satisfied with it. But this is one that, as time's gone on, I have been a little less interested in revisiting it. It's just, I don't know, it doesn't feel like it's really part of the series. It feels like a fan film, honestly, at the end of the day. And that's not to take anything away from fan films, but this definitely feels like a big budget Saw fan film. Coming in at number 7, and this is kind of where I do start to gravitate toward liking the films a lot more. This is one that I actually am a little bit of a defender of, despite its lower ranking here. This is going to be Saw 5. I know a lot of people make fun of this one for being the one where the characters suck. That's kind of the thing with a lot of the people who are in the traps. A lot of them are very ill-defined, especially as we get into the later half of the franchise here, I've noticed. But I really do like the 5 characters here. I believe they were the Fateful 5, the Fateful 5, I think is what they were called here. I'll have text on screen if I'm wrong there. But these characters I actually enjoyed. I really liked the grand revelation that, oh my god, we had to work together. It's like, I don't know, the first time I watched it, I was kind of thinking that, but I didn't really put a whole lot of thought into it, because when you go into these films, you're looking to see the gore. Like, you are here for the traps, you're here for the bloodshed, and all the carnage and chaos that ensues. I really like where things went with Strom in this one, where he's starting to be set up as being pinned down as the guy who's responsible for all this, when it's really Hoffman. And I freaking love Hoffman as a villain here. Out of the Jigsaw apprentices and Jigsaw personalities, honestly, he might be my favorite. Like, I've come around to realizing this is probably not the best film, but at the end of the day, I'm still going to be a defender, singing the little bit of praises that this film has going on for it. I'm not somebody who doesn't look forward to watching Saw 5. In fact, it is one that, if I'm in a mood to just kind of pick a Saw film, despite the low ranking, this is one that I will just grab and be like, turn my mind off, watch Saw 5. So coming in 6th place, this is currently the most recent film to see release in the franchise. This is going to be Spiral from the Book of Saw. This is one that I think is really interesting because it feels as though it stands on its own from the rest of the series. It definitely has a bit of an anthology feel going on with it, where they do sort of acknowledge the fact that there was a Jigsaw killer before. The other films are more or less canon, but this one feels far removed from the rest of them, and it's one that I think can stand on its own. You don't really need to have seen the rest of the films. It definitely has that sort of one and done, we're connected, but I'm kind of my own one and done in a pre-established series. It definitely did a lot to sort of remove that weird sour taste that Jigsaw left in my mouth, honestly. But this is one that I enjoy, but I haven't watched it as much as I would have liked to. I still find myself going back to the first 6 films more often. But this is one that I think is just really good. It feels like not only is it supposed to be a good Saw entry, but it's also just trying to be like a really good thriller. It is definitely one of the better films overall in the franchise if we're looking at it from a filmmaking point. Coming in 5th place, this is one that seems to be a big fan favorite for a lot of people, and it's one that as I get older I find myself enjoying more. This is going to be Saw 6. I think the most memorable thing in this film is going to be the carousel set piece, the carousel shotguns. That is definitely the thing that I most remembered from this film. I think this was one that I did rent when it came out, and there wasn't a whole lot that I was able to remember aside from that. Like, the whole plot about the health insurance guy, remember not being too interested in that, but again, as you get older and you start to develop these adult responsibilities, it becomes something that you can get behind a lot more. And I don't know, I feel like the older I get, the higher this one might climb. All the choices he has to make throughout this film and the sort of metaphor for the way his company operates, I thought was really ingenious. Got a lot more of a somber tone, I think, than the rest of the films, where some of them are just turn your mind off fun. That whole commentary, though, is just something that I think is really relevant and becomes, again, more relevant the older you get. It just makes for an enjoyable film. It's definitely got some edge of your seat brutality here, like the try not to breathe trap. That one is just that's a really screwed up way to have to go there. And the carousel one, that's just some edge of your seat shit right there, man. Saw 6, number 5. Coming in at number 4, we have Saw 3. Of course I had to pay homage to Jeff as a character there. Saw 3, guys, is number 4. This is the first one that I actually did see all the way through. And this might be why I wasn't too big on the franchise going forward after this one came out, because seeing John die at the end of it, I remember I was like, okay, so why the hell am I going to want to watch Saw 4? But, I eventually did watch parts of that one when it came out. I think it was after it came out on home video. Oh man, I gotta rack my brain to think about that. But I don't know, Saw 3 I really enjoyed. It was really interesting because, now at this point that he's the bad guy. This probably isn't the best place to start. But if I remember correctly from talking to Chris, I think he said that they were supposed to be just doing a trilogy here. And you could totally see it being 1, 2, and 3 being all you need to watch, really. Like, you could see the makings of a trilogy there. Like, you can totally call it a day at the end of Saw 3. And it's one that I just found enjoyable. I do get frustrated at times with Jeff and his indecisions that he makes or doesn't make throughout this film. He's just a really aggravating sort of lead character. I find myself really invested, though, with the whole medical procedural plot going on here. It's just super tense, the medical drama. The really crude sort of procedural that goes on there. It's like, you're just going to use these standard work tools. We got everything that you need. Alcohol, yeah, we got that. And it's just really brutal, and, it was before the series really started to go haywire. Everything going on in this film is still pretty damn enjoyable to watch. Like I said, Jeff may be frustrating, but his mission and the feeling of what he's trying to overcome, I could totally see the merit in why he's having a hard time making decisions on whether or not to save these people. And you kind of understand why he doesn't want to save them, but this is the one I find myself probably talking the most shit to while I'm watching it. And it's funny when you consider where a lot of the lower films are. This is one where I'm just spiraling out of control, guys. Coming in at number 3, we have Saw 4. And this one I think is really cool too, because with the revelation at the end that this is going on simultaneously with Saw 3, I thought was pretty cool. I like the way they sort of fake you out with the Hoffman twist. I really like Rig as a character too, and being that, I'm Dan, he's Dan, I totally can get behind him as a character. It's like, whatever you're going through, man, I feel what you're going through. Of course, I don't. But this one definitely has some really cool traps going on in it. It's definitely one of the ones where I find myself cringing at some of what goes on. Like when the lady's getting her scalp ripped off, that was just... That was freaking agonizing to watch there. But I do like what happens in the motel room. That was intensely gratifying to watch that happen. I don't know if Saw 4 is underappreciated in the Saw fan base, but it was one that for a while I did not like very much, but as you can see, this is one that I thoroughly enjoy. This one kind of moves all over in my top 5, honestly, but right now we got it here at number 3. Saw 4 is just a lot of fun. So my runner-up here in second place is going to be the original Saw. Now this one, as you guys know, Saw 3 was where I started my journey in the franchise. So when I watched this one, I didn't have that sort of mystery of, well, who do I think is going to be the bad guy behind the scenes here? Is it going to be Danny Glover? Are one of these guys going to be orchestrating the whole thing? I genuinely was surprised that Adam had some involvement, though. That I did not see coming. The final shot, that I was aware of, so that wasn't really a big shock to me. I wish I had started here. Maybe this could have been number one if I had seen this one first, but, you know, the whole mystery element that they incorporate in this film, and it definitely is a great mystery if this is where you're starting. I just didn't have that luxury of being surprised by the ending. Like, when they first revealed John as a character, period, like when you see him in that hospital bed, it's like, oh, well, that's the bad guy, obviously. It's like, he may look comatose and shit, but he's the one who's doing all this. But yeah, the original Saw, man, it's a great watch. It's definitely an engaging film. It's a slower film. You could tell it was definitely made on a lower budget than the rest of them. But this one's just a lot of fun. And the mystery, where, again, a lot of the elements didn't really have me on the edge of trying to figure things out, it was still a pretty engaging watch. So coming in at number one is going to be Saw 2. This one is the one that I have seen the most. This is the one I enjoy watching the most, obviously. This one is just a lot of fun. I like the whole idea of the house and the traps being telecast to where Jigsaw's at when he's been interrogated by Donnie Wahlberg there. It's pretty engaging too, with the whole idea of, hey, you give me my son back, you son of a bitch. Oh no, he's in a safe place. If you've seen it, you know that was just a hell of a reveal. This movie's almost 20 years old, so I think a lot of people, if you're watching this, you know he's in the safe the whole time. It was a pre-recorded shit. But this is definitely the one that really was the first one where the surprise reveal got me. But the whole idea of the father-son dynamic is one thing that I really dig in this film. I just love everything that this film has to offer. The needle pit is the most cringe-inducing moment in the franchise, I think. I like the little glass box where the one antidote's up there and girl reaches up in there and her freaking arms get stuck, and the way Xavier starts going crazy. Like, this is the Saw film that I am the most passionate about, where Snyder is really big on the whole franchise. Like, I like the whole franchise, but this film is the one where it's like, the way he feels about the whole bunch, I feel about this one. Just everything going on in this film is freaking brilliant. Saw 2, number 1. That was my tailgate ranking of the Saw franchise as it stands, guys. Let me know down below how you would rank the Saw films. Are you excited for Saw 10? I'm actually pretty excited for this one. It sounds like it's going to be an interesting watch. It kind of has a Saw 6 vibe for sure. Like, it sounds like a more violent Saw 6, maybe. Anyway, let me know again down below what you guys thought of that. Your thoughts on the franchise as it stands. What you think is going to be the future of the Saw franchise. Is it coming back? All that down below. Play with the other icons there. We'll see you next time.